Hi everybody, Mature Simmer here. So welcome to a little bit of an experiment. Figured I'll give it a shot. I'll share what I'm doing, similar to my philosophy on other things. If I'm doing it, doesn't really take much to record it and share it with folks. And if some people are interested, fine. And if others aren't, then they just will watch something else on the channel. But I've been trying to determine, can I go ahead and show some things on the channel in a way that I felt I was happy with and that would work. So I've got an idea. So at this point, for those who are unaware of what the journey has been, I've really only been doing this for maybe a month, a little bit more than a month, the Flow Flight Simulator thing. So you're looking at someone who doesn't have a lot of time invested. I've spent about 200 hours in Microsoft Flight Simulator. I spent a little bit of time, I shouldn't say a good amount of time. I tried out X-Plane 12 for about a week and then determined with the scenery and so forth, it was just more work to do. So without getting into that, I'm not going to make this a video about that. But as I do as the mature simmer, I tend to like to, try to simulate something that is somewhat realistic, or at least gives me a sense of doing something a little bit more than just jump in a plane and go somewhere. So you may be looking at, what's this little guy here? So one of the things you can do in the flight sim community is you can join these things called virtual airlines. Talking with folks after looking for several recommendations, I went ahead and I joined this outfit called Walker Air Transport. I'm also in flyuva.org, which is United Virtual Airlines. This set of videos, this series, whatever it's going to turn into, is going to be the Walker Air Transport stuff. And you can do various type of flights, but one of them are tours. So you can see there's a lot of tours that I've thought might be interesting. But I finished the U.S. Capitol tour, which was flying to all U.S. capitals. And so I was looking for a little short tour to go ahead and kind of do this experiment on the channel with. And so the shortest thing I have is the 961 nautical miles for the New Zealand Adventure Tour. So you can see here, if we go into the tour, we get the description. It talks about, in the words of Bilbo Baggins, who is from New Zealand, we're going on an adventure. Enjoy the massive mountain ranges and stunning natural beauty of New Zealand as you travel from Auckland to Invercargill with many mountainous approaches. This will challenge your flying skills with airports like Queenstown, which in the real world require special training to undertake. You will land on mountainsides and beautiful strips by the oceans. Remember to watch out for birds. New Zealand has some of the rarest fauna in the world. It is an untouched gem, and you will not see anything like it anywhere else in the world. So part of why I thought this would be interesting is, it's short. 961 nautical miles is not much compared to, I think I did a little over 14,000 in the U.S. tour that I did. So basically the way the tours work, you have to fly the legs in sequence, and you can see, I can't do this. You have to complete the previous flight. So I have to do them in order. So we're going to go from the North Island down to the South Island, basically in little hops. And so we're going from this first leg here between Auckland International Airport and Rotorua Regional Airport. And I can use these type of planes, but I'm thinking for this, because part of what I want to do is I'm still concerned enough about my skill set that VFR flying, while I've done some training videos on it and so forth, it's just too easy to get lost. I'm not promising I'm not going to get lost, but if I have an airplane that at least has instruments and I can put in a flight plan or do something that might guide me in the right direction, that I might have a little bit of a hope. But the intent is with the beauty of New Zealand. I've never been there personally. It's on my bucket list. I think it probably is on everyone's bucket list on the planet who has a bucket list and can go visit. But I certainly want to take a look at this, and that's one of the reasons that I really was excited about Microsoft Flight Simulator is, I know they model the Earth pretty accurately. I've flown over areas I'm familiar with. They look pretty stunning, and so I can only imagine what we're going to see here. Let's kind of hop in. I'll walk you through the process a little bit of what we need to do. So we're going to go ahead and we do what's called bid this flight. And at this point, I'm going to choose a charter plane, and I am going to use, I need to put this up in one of my favorites. I'm going to use a TBM 930. I've not really flown this plane before, but it's got a good high speed, and so I figure, again, to kind of move around and not take a long time, this might be the best. We'll take a look. I may change my mind later. And then, you know, you can carry passengers or cargo in this case. We'll take passengers. It doesn't really matter. And we'll bid the flight. And so then what we get is kind of the map here, and it's showing us, you know, Auckland and Rotorua. And then within Flight Sim world, you can use this thing called SimBrief. It will generate a flight plan. And so it's suggesting we fly at 18,000 feet, but we're not going to do that because we want to see the landscape. So we're kind of going to do what we'd call VFR, which is, if we can, we're going to stay under 4,000 feet. Now again, I know there's a lot of mountains. I have no idea what the height of the mountains is. So maybe we'll end up crashing into a mountainside. I don't know. But we'll see. So this is the route it's proposing. I have no real reason to suggest anything different. It's a little harder to get free charts and stuff outside the US. You can use SkyVector if you're doing things in the US, and it's easy to work with those. So this is all going to be a little bit new for me, but we can see, you know, we need 843 pounds of fuel and so forth. Being unfamiliar with this plane, there may be a little bit of fumbling around as we go in, but this is what we need to do to begin with. Okay, so for the flight sim to communicate with the website, you use this thing called SmartCars, which is another app you need. So this was all learning that I had to do for months and hours. So you can see it's the same information, you know, the airports and so forth, and kind of where we're headed. And so I'm set here, and basically when I start, because this will be off screen, I click on this and that links to the sim, but I can't do that until the plane is sitting at this airport. Otherwise I get an error. And then the other thing I have discovered and used through watching various videos or whatever is this thing called Sim Toolkit Pro. And all these tools that I'm showing at this point are free. There's a couple things I have that aren't, but I don't think they're going to come into play here. But this basically logs the flights, so you can see here the finishing flights I had for the tour, and you can see I wasn't using it the whole time. So I've only got, you know, 12,000 nautical miles, 34 flights, 40 hours that I went ahead and did, and you can kind of see where I flew around. So I kind of missed this leg to this leg, and then this leg to this leg. But basically, you know, I kind of had missed the whole Northeast before I discovered this, and then started kind of flying around here, going around, and the tour ended by flying a long, long leg to Honolulu. That was a 6-hour flight by itself. You can see almost 7 hours, 6 hours and 48 minutes. One of the things you'll see with the virtual airlines is very few of them let you warp time, meaning fast forward things. So you're having to take that time, however long that flight takes, in real time is what it's going to take in Flight Sim. That's how Flight Sim works. The nice thing is when you're on autopilot, I did all these in A320 aircraft, so I could take off, immediately turn on autopilot, and kind of not pay attention to the plane until it was ready to land. So it makes it doable and possible, but obviously as you choose to play, you can do it any way you want. And if you want to manually fly the plane for 7 hours, I suppose you can do that. My intent here is certainly to do a lot more, if not all, manual flying for this, so there's going to be a little bit of fun with that, I'm sure. But in any event, what this lets me do is I can go into flight planning, load last SimBrief plan. I'm not sure if I need a real airplane or not, but basically you can put this in, you can hit this green button, which is follow me, and then it will move that map along, and it's a way to do something like some pilots will purchase a subscription to Navigraph, which costs about $100 a year. But again, I don't know if Navigraph handles like this part of the world even. But again, that will be off screen, but that is a tool I use. You know, and at some point if people are interested, I can kind of show how that works a little bit, so forth, if there's any interest in that. But for now, just trying to be a little transparent in what's happening. So at this point, I'm ready to go back into the sim. And so what I want to do is I want to put in the airport, which is Nzaa, and then you'll see it brings up Auckland International in Auckland. It moves us there, and it gives us a view. And this is something that I found really interesting, really fun from the standpoint. So let's see, these are, I don't even know how you'd get over there. At this point, I'm not in the airport yet, so I'm getting ready to load in. But if I go to Sim Toolkit Pro, this is one of the really neat things that it will show. You know, and this is not me, this is someone else at the airport. But you can click on either airport, and it's going to give you this layout with all the taxiways and everything. So if you recall, when I said, well, I don't know how to get up here, there are taxiways here, which tells me that I can do that. Because again, I'm what's called a GA aircraft, or a general aviation aircraft. I normally wouldn't be at a gate like this. I'm not large enough, so I'm going to be over in, you know, these spaces or these, and these just seemed a little bit more reasonable. But if you're trying to be a little more realistic in what you're doing, so I'm giving you more than I had bargained for, but as I go through it, you know, again, one of the things I like to do on the channel is give you enough information that you can enjoy this if you're new to it, and can kind of fumble your way through it, you know, maybe with a little less work than I did. So this is what's called METAR, which is basically the weather information. Now, we don't get any METAR from this other location, probably because it's some really remote little airport. So that's potentially going to make some things a little more difficult, but we'll see. But the thing I'm looking for specifically is this section, which gives me the wind speed. So it's telling me it's out at 350. So the wind is blowing from that location, which basically is going to be up at the top. So if you think of 0 through 360, so we're going to be kind of coming in almost from the north at 6 knots. And so what you should do with that is figure out, okay, which runway would the airport likely be using? If you're flying on something like VATSIM or some network, like that decision will have been made for you already. Because yeah, we need to go the other way. So I'm gonna go over here, and I'm gonna set ramp parking 19 as my departure. And see, so that's telling me that's a general aviation ramp medium, which is going to be more than enough. Where I could probably, if I pick 29, that's small. So realistically, this might be where we're at. And this is kind of giving us the same info, 350 degrees at 5 knots. Because you can have live weather. I am not going to do that. We'll go ahead. We're going to do clear skies, because part of what I want to do in this is I want to see things. And we're going to move into, in the middle of the day is when we'll regularly fly. So the thing I can see, I've noticed there's an issue here with Microsoft Flight Simulator. I don't think it really took the time. So if I move this now a little bit, you can see it brightened up the entire airport. What I have found is because it loaded in the evening, sometimes it doesn't always change. And then when you hit fly, you're suddenly put in at the other time. But if I start here, and then, you know, what would probably be better is to take off that way, so to go from 5 right. But I don't really need to pick that, because unless I'm going to start at the runway, I don't need to do that. So, and then this is because I'm using a livery from Walker Air Transport, which is a requirement to get credit for anything. And part of it is for exactly what I'm doing here. If I'm putting a video out for people to see, it helps promote this virtual airline and get people interested in what they're doing. So I'm going to go ahead at this point and load myself into the airport by hitting fly, and I'm going to be here at ramp 29, general aviation small, and there should be plenty of room there, I would think. Load's not too bad in this part. It does take a long time for the sim to load in general. There's just a lot going on, I imagine. If you think about it, you know, I know it's not loading the whole world because it just worries about the area you're in. But still, it's many minutes. It's probably 5 minutes to load up the sim when you first start. So that's why and there's nothing to really do other than watch load screens like this. And it still put me in at 9:56 p.m. So we'll change that before I do anything. But you can see it gives you a nice little view, and then you hit ready to fly, and here we are. Now I have something called GSX, which is Ground Services, GSX Pro, which allows us to do some things. That is a paid service, but let me fix the time. So you go up here to weather, and we want to adjust that to basically, let's say 12 hours earlier or so. So 10:07 a.m., which is kind of what I wanted to do. So, if we come out here, now we're going to see, here's our plane. We've got stuff going on. So one of the other things I'm going to bring into play here, so there's this group Fly-by-Wire Simulations, and I mentioned I used an A320. This is the A320 that I've been flying, which works with Walker. I can put the Walker livery on it, but this is a freeware version of the plane, and most people have said it is as good or better than the paid versions of the plane that you can find. So obviously no reason not to do it. Full autopilot, we'll do auto land, we'll do anything. But the reason I'm coming in here is not that. One of the other things they have are traffic. So there's base models, which basically allow different liveries, but there's something here called the injector. So I'm going to start that. And so it loads some things up here. You basically have to hit enter, so you have to wait long enough. And you can now see that there's 10 additional parked aircraft, 7 GA aircraft. And so some of these are parked at Auckland, some of these are, some other things are happening here and there. But if I go here, now I no longer have an empty place. And it's not perfect because obviously this plane spawned on top of some of the trucks. But if you want an airport that seems a little bit more real and a little bit more active, this tool is awesome. And again, it's a free tool, so you can bring it in, and now you've got what looks like a functioning airport. And so it will also create traffic in the air and so forth, which could make it more difficult as well. What happens when you spawn on the ramp is you spawn in what's called a cold and a dark state, which means nothing's on. The aircrafts have been parked, and we need to get it going. I've never taken this plane from a cold and dark. I've got a checklist I'm going to work through, but this is part of what we're going to need to do. So we've got our yokes, obviously our locations. I'm not going to teach you about planes here because frankly I barely know about them myself. I learned as part of this over the last month. I would like to think I've been a good student and I've learned a lot, but in the end what I have figured out is planes obviously function very similarly. You're going to have different switches, you're going to have the yokes, you're going to have all the control surfaces. This is the autopilot here, because the flight director, that's what FD is. And then there's the autopilot, there's a yaw damper. So these are all things, even though I've never been in this aircraft, like I'm familiar with what I'm looking at just because of what I've learned. This is how we set our heading. This is probably setting our nav radio. This is flight level control to go up and down vertical speed at a certain speed. But my hope is I'm going to be able to fly a little more manually. So the first thing I'm going to do, you can highlight the yoke and click on it. Oops, there we go. And that allows you to see things and see the controls. So that's one of the kind of unique things with Flight Simulator that obviously you wouldn't have normally. But at this point, if you remember, we're going to have to look at our fuel. We're going to have to make sure we have enough fuel for the flight and so forth. So anyway, what we could do with GSX. All right, so I'll set my parking brake. And you can see there's deboarding, catering, refueling, boarding, and so forth. So I may go ahead and do some of this just to give you a flavor for this, because I do find it interesting as you go through. But before I need to do that, like I first need to fuel the plane before we get our 3 passengers or whatever it is on here. So what we need to do is there's a crash lever. It says crash lever up. I have no idea what that is. So what I'll likely be doing is I'll be looking at things on the internet and then coming back here. All right, so what I do want to do now that I'm in here is I'm going to go ahead and with SmartCars we're going to start the flight tracking. So you can see flight started successfully, and it knows we're in Flight Simulator. We're flying this plane. The WAT is going to tell any Walker people who are reviewing my flight that I did put the proper livery on. And then right now we have the flaps set and now boarding. Now this is important because for the pre-flight work we're doing here, we get credit in the points that we earn because we're following proper procedure. So the parking brake here, we had that off. We turn that on. Again, I'll just flip that. You can see, that moves the pedals. I think usually the parking brake is on top of the rudder pedals is kind of what I've read. So you've got to turn that parking brake on to request services. And then, again, looking at levers, this is the crash bar over here. So let me see. Why is it not moving more than interesting? It only lets me move halfway. So there we go. All right. So that's the crash lever. So now that's moved up. And then we need the source because I don't have a GPU. So I want to be on battery. So right in the center there. And then the generator. So let's see. So there's presets. So 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. So the generator I want on main. And then if I was going to be worried about air traffic, which I'm not going to get into any of that because frankly I'm not that comfortable with it, but also most of the people who are avid flight sim people that have helped guide me through this, friends and others have said the air traffic control in any flight simulator is trash. That's a direct quote from many people. So they're like, just don't bother. Like if you're going to fly on VATSIM, fine, but if not, just fly. So that is how I have learned. All right, so we've got that info. All right, so we've gotten all our displays running. I had to hit this right soft key to get this to come up. Some people have said sometimes you see these start up, sometimes you don't. It just really depends. They said the audio test, which I assume is going to be, let's see, 7, 6, 8, 9, 0. All right, 5. I don't know where they looked, but they said somewhere that the audio test isn't modeled. I swear he looked, the person I was watching looked higher up here. Clearly I didn't understand it, but it doesn't matter. They're saying it's not modeled, but what they said is modeled is this, so we can hit the light test and then hold that, and then, it shows us all of that. So right now it's obviously showing those green because the gear is down, but you also saw everything come on that we could see. So that way we've tested our equipment there. So the one thing I need to do is we can see here, this is our fuel quantity usage. So left, right, we have 71. Okay, but that doesn't help me any because I need to know the weight. Because if you remember on my sim brief, we needed what was called block fuel of 843 pounds. So if I go here to weight and balance on the plane, I can change this to pounds, which I'd already done. And I can see I have 504 pounds in each tank. So I have 1,000 pounds. So I have more fuel than I need, which is okay. So we'll leave that as it is. And maybe on a future flight, we'll worry about refueling and so forth. But then what we will go ahead and do, just so you can kind of see this and decide if you find it fun, is we're going to request boarding. And what that does is it looks out at the SimBrief data that we have. And, it knows we need, I think it knows we need 3 people. I'm saying that now and I'm hesitating because normally that would be because I've loaded the flight plan in. Right. So we're not going to board crew because that's just going to take more time. But none of the planes near us have left yet. Now the fuel truck has gone away, and so is the catering truck that was there. All the way, this plane here looks like he's taken off in the interim. So once again, it is, a functional airport. So, all right. So here comes the bus with some passengers. And again, because we don't have stairs on this kind of a plane and so forth, you're not going to see any action. You're not going to visually see any passengers. But this is going to go ahead, and as it said, passenger boarding started. It opens up, and normally, if there is something to see, and I don't know if things are really loud. So 3 passengers, they got on and off very quickly, and there we go, boarding completed. So now we're to believe we have passengers in the back with us, and we're ready to go. And so at this point, what we want to do is we're going to request, we're going to prepare for pushback and departure. And, you know, we'll go ahead and do that. But we have enough fuel, and so that means at this point we can start the engines. And so I need to turn this auxiliary BP to on. I don't know exactly what that is, but it might be bleed pressure or so forth. I think we'll put fuel selector to auto. It doesn't tell me to do that. Alright, actually it does later, so I'll put that back to manual. And then the ignition is on auto. I need to put the starter up to on for 2 seconds, then off. Alright, so in theory, there we go. So the propeller's starting to spin, and then we're looking for something here called NG. When it gets to 13, we've got enough. We've got enough power, and then we're supposed to set the throttle to low idle. So we have that now, and then we're continuing to watch, and when the NG, which is, I don't know what NG stands for directly, but it has to do with the fans spinning in the engine. When it gets to 52% or green, we can now go all the way to high idle. And so at this point, you know, the propeller's moving fast enough that you can't really see it. That poor lady's probably in really the wrong place, but so, you know, they're setting us up to taxi us out. Normally they would be telling us to start the engine later. They obviously can't tell we've gone ahead and done that. So I'm doing this extremely unrealistically, obviously, because yes, she's standing right near the propeller. You can only imagine what would be happening to this poor woman if this was really what's happening. Now, I get this a little mixed up here, so I think this is the way this goes. So I want the nose out to the left, or to the right, I should say, and the tail to the left. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I need to release the parking brakes, as it says, and then they're going to start to move me out. And there we go. So we are now getting sent, but you can see the propeller's definitely spinning. You know, you can kind of see it there a little bit. It would have been very unpleasant for that poor girl otherwise. But GSX is cool in that it usually knows. Okay, so I always do it the wrong way, but whatever. I've done it. And the nice thing is, like now if I bring the map over, you can see I'm rendered here, facing the wrong way. Alright, plane landing behind us. Again, this is kind of what the injector does. Just gives you some stuff happening, which is pretty nice. Alright, and now it's probably going to ask me, alright, as you said, they're asking for a confirmation for a good engine start, which we have. Again, we apologize for putting her in danger, but we're going to go ahead. Alright, so they will then come in, and they're going to disconnect. They're going to pull, or I think reinsert. No, they're going to pull the bypass pin, and they'll show it to us at some point, because basically that way it precludes us from steering the plane while they're taxiing. So she's now disconnected that unit, and now he'll back away, and then you know, the taxi engine or whatever they're called. So now there you go, she's unlocking the gear, and we'll kind of take a peek over here. There he goes. And now she's going to come in, and there's a pin underneath, which, again, she should be closer, but the bypass pin removed, tow truck disconnected. And you'll notice, like, the system is self-aware, like, she's a New Zealand or an Australian accent. And so you can see the bypass pin has this big thing on it. She's going to now show us very clearly that she's removed it. So that's kind of our first indication, and that lets us know and then frees us from ground services. And we now have full control of the plane. So she's waving goodbye. He's going ahead and parking himself out of the way. And there we go. Have a good trip. And she's going to go back and wait for the next plane. So, and now they vanish because they're no longer needed. But, there's some basic functionality in Microsoft Flight Simulator, but someone showed me this, and I'm like, for the sim thing, and especially when you're doing big airliners and stuff, it's actually pretty neat. So if I ever get to the point of showing some of that, we'll definitely look at it. So at this point, we've got the engine running. My understanding is we can pull this throttle over. How do we do that? I'm using the mouse, and it's not... because we should be able to pull it over in taxi. Alright, so after the engine start, only with GPU, which I haven't done any of that, so I didn't have the ground power unit. So now I need to put the auxiliary BP to auto. Fuel select goes to auto, so I assume that means it'll pull from the things as it needs. And then autopilot and trims on. So what we'll typically do is we'll set, let me turn on the flight director, so we're going to see things like roll and pitch show up. Alright, so I've got what's called a heading bug. So you can see it says heading. So I want to set that to 05, because that's about where we're at. Whoops. Sometimes, again, I've not used this plane, so I apologize for some of the confusion. But then that way, if I need the autopilot to take over, I'm set there. Let's see, PFD, map settings, nav source. So there is a flight management system. And again, maybe we'll just kind of manually try this, and we'll just laugh at each other. Because I can observe on the map if I'm heading in the right direction. But again, my intent is not really to use any of the other features as far as any automation that it might have. But let's see. So if I turn on autopilot, I can't do that. Yaw damper, so that basically will keep the plane from bouncing around. You can see, I think, yeah. So the flight director has that little line next to it. And then, again, that's the heading bug. I'm not sure what the course is. It says push direct. And then VNAV and whatever, but we'll worry about that. So the other thing we need to set is the barometer pressure, which I can get off of the system. Now what I need, however, is how do I get this to Q and H versus barometric pressure. So I want to turn off the caution and the warnings. We don't want those. I'm not really actually following the checklist now. I'm going through things that I know we need. Okay, we've got air conditioner. Yeah, it's interesting that it's telling me there's this flight management system, but I just don't know. So it's going to be interesting. Let's say that. All right. So let's just keep moving on. So bleed air to auto. So that should be that. Inert separation on. And ignore the advisory warning. Okay, there we go. And then taxi on. So let's see, are the lights up here? Yes, okay. Taxi on. Nav on. Pulse on. And then we'd request a taxi clearance, but we're not using air traffic control, so we're not worried about that. All right, and so if I flip this on, that looks like autopilot and trim. Let's see, something changed there. So there's the inert sep on, which was the warning that it said to ignore. Stall no heat, pitot no heat. So I think I need to fix those. Alright, so back over here playing around. If I move that over to the right, you can see now that I'm in taxi mode, I have to, or to the left, to move it to the left, I have to use the right mouse button. That's what caused that motion. So it just took some fumbling around to figure that out. The heater is there. So that's the left, that's the right. So both of those, so it's pitot right in the stall heater and the pitot left heater. So if I have that, you can see pitot no heat left. So basically, on a plane, and this again was something I had no idea until I've done some flight tutorials. This one's facing backward, it seems to me, so it seems a little odd. But those tubes are what are called pitot tubes. I'm looking for something else along the plane somewhere. You know, there's one underneath here. I think that's where they are on this plane. But that is basically how the plane knows what altitude it's in and so forth. But at this point, I think we're ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to taxi down to 5 right. So we'll see. Let me put myself in the right location in the plane. So you can hit the space bar and raise yourself up a little bit. So again, if I hit the A key, I fly with an Xbox controller, by the way. So I have my parking brake off. You can see that in the center. So there we go. So, whoop, well, we've got a plane there. It'll let me go through because of the way I'm set. But we're going to try to be a little reasonable here and hope that we're not taking anybody out, including ourselves. And I should say the way I'm set, you know, it just, you can't, you don't want to be running into things. So, okay, I'm going a little fast. You don't want to taxi more than 15 knots. I don't know that I know where the ground speed is on this thing, but it just feels fast. And so again, I'm looking at my Sim Toolkit Pro just to verify. So I'm now on Bravo. I can actually go down one more. So we're going to do that. You know, and the nice thing is, whatever these airlines are, I'm not familiar with them because I'm not from New Zealand. But this looks like something that is probably here. If you're from New Zealand, I'm sure you know what they are. It looks like Air New Zealand on the top of the plane. So that's the kind of stuff the flight injector will do, is it'll show you that. It should start moving again. I have let go of the brake, but I might need to speed up again. So I'm trying to turn left. You turn with the rudder. So if I go here, you can see my tail on the back end, just using the trigger keys. And that'll get me where I need to be. And what I want to do then is go down this way. And then this is the main taxiway alpha that will get me to the runway. So nobody in front of us, which is nice. But again, most of these, sometimes there's scenery aircraft, but my guess is this would have just been an empty airport. So by putting in the flight injector and using that add-on, which is again a free add-on, you get those kind of capabilities. So you can see we're going 33, so it's far too fast, but, and I probably don't need to go all the way to the end of the runway. So I'll probably go over to Alpha Niner here, which is coming up kind of as the next major taxiway. So the one that's coming up now is Alpha 8, but that comes in kind of as a off-ramp from the runway. So we're going one more entry over. And once again, I am still going way too fast, but it's a little plane. And it's flight simulator. I don't know. We'll do our best. And we want to try to follow things here. See, and this is the point of going as fast as I was. Then you can't make that turn. So that's why you're trying to go the way we did. So kind of up here, we're going to park. And so normal procedure. Now let's see, what's it giving us an error for here? Oh, just because we have the parking brake on. We understand that. Normal procedure now is our taxi is done. We'd normally be calling to the tower, letting them know that we are ready to go. Obviously, we're not doing that at this point, but we are now going to be heading off to Rotorua in a bit, but there's a few things that we likely need to do. So if we go back up to our lights here, we now landing, the strobe can go off, and then, strobe wasn't, strobe can go on, I'm sorry. The pulse can go off. Want to go from taxi to landing. Okay, we don't need any de-ice. We have the inert separation, which my understanding from watching a video is it keeps gravel and stuff from getting in to the engine intake. And then what we want to do is we want to set our flaps to takeoff flaps, which normally would be, let's see, there. So let's see if I do, you can see the flaps head over. So there you go, takeoff flaps, landing flaps. There's just two settings for flaps. I'm just kind of trying to take a look. I don't see anything. Oh, right there. So where I was pointing. So up, takeoff, and then landing. So you can see the angle of attack, which is what AOA is pretty substantial. When you're landing, you need more of those points. And then again, what you should do if you're doing things correctly, let me zoom back out so we can get a good view of the plane. You want to test your control surfaces. So we're going to do our left ailerons. You can see that one comes up, that one goes down. We'll do our right, opposite happens. Then we're going to test, I think it's our elevator. So we're pulling back, which will get us to go up. We're pushing down. So it looks like kind of, just that back section rotates, and then the rudder, we kind of know was working because we were able to taxi. But you're testing your control surfaces just before to make sure nothing sticks, any of that. And then if you have a SID procedure, you need to set your transponder squawk code and so forth. Those are all air traffic things that we're less worried about. So at this point, in theory, we're ready to taxi. So I release my parking brake, and we're starting to move a little bit. So we'll go down, set ourselves down. You can see we were a little high. And now it's just fly and pray. But, hard to see anything right now. Like I said, we'll see if I can stay certainly below, should be able to stay below 8,000 feet pretty easily. So I'm probably only leaving a third of the runway to take off here, but I don't know that I need more than that on this plane. So again, we're going to go ahead. I'm going to just give you a view. I'm going to hit my throttle all the way up. You're steering yourself with your rudder. You're looking on the left side. You can see we're at 40. And usually this may be the takeoff point, but usually there's a clear indication. Like, I've done a really bad job as a pilot of figuring out what I need to do here. But yeah, the 120 is probably where I need to be. I think with the white I could fly at that point, but there we go. Pretty easy pull back on the stick. We've got some planes down there blinking away that we're getting ready to take off. Clearly they were using the runway the other way. Pull up the landing gear. So there we go. And then we are heading out. And at this point I know I want to turn. So I'm at about a 20-degree bank angle. You can see that because I'm pointing to the second line here. So that's a little bit heavy normally. Okay, so it's probably yelling at me about the flaps. Oh, no, it's not. I don't know what it's yelling at me about. It's saying autopilot. But that would probably be because the autopilot doesn't know where we're going. Would be my guess, but so let's see. So at this point, so sorry, I'm trying to get my views set. So I want to get in here a bit. Let's see what's blinking. ITT. I do not know what that is, which is probably not a good thing. But I want to be heading on roughly, let's see, I'm about straight and level, or straight there. I shouldn't say I'm level. So I'm climbing a bit, which is what I want to be doing. All right, let me clear that. I don't know what ITT is. So the other thing I did learn is if I did not... Alright, so what I'm going to do, you're going to see this wheel turn a little bit. So that's called the trim in a plane. This was the hardest thing for me to learn with any of this. So you kind of try to get yourself level, and you can see, like right now I'm going to back off the throttle a bit. And that might be what it is just the throttle was set. Like they're not expecting you to leave it that high once you take off. So I'd like to level off around 4,000, like I said. All right, I am going off track. Just watching my view there. All right, so I'm going to push the trim forward a bit. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get myself to the point where if I'm not holding the yoke, that the plane will fly level. So that just makes it easier as a pilot to fly, which is incredibly important, because if you would imagine, I mean, yeah, we're only going, you know, I think it's 90 miles here, so we're not going that far. But so now I let go, and you can see I'm climbing again, so I need to go back down a bit. I don't know why it keeps turning. Okay, so it's still climbing a lot. Now some of this could... Whoops, no, I don't need landing gear. I pulled the throttle back too much is what was happening. Alright, well now I've gone too far. I'm kind of used to flying the Airbus. That's not what I'm in anymore. Alright, I am so far off course. See, and this is the problem with trying to trim an airplane. You like play this game all the time. You know, let's take a look at the beautiful New Zealand countryside here. Alright, so just try to get myself where I need to be. Alright, so he's still sinking a bit, but maybe not. So let's see, because if I can get myself trimmed, then all I have to do is steer. And then I'm not doing 3 things at once, which is what my problem is. So right now I'm climbing, so I still need to go down, because I don't want to pull my throttle back too much more. So let's see. Because what I'm looking at is this indicator on the outside end. That's my vertical lift. See, so now I'm even. Now I'm descending again. So I'm going to keep touching the trim a little bit, and you can see that wheel just barely moving. And what that does is it moves a little trim tab on the elevator. And again, you need to put upward pressure when you turn, otherwise you're going to dive. So shame on me. I created my own problem. I'm actually staying way closer to 4,000 than I would have expected. Alright, so let's see. Because it's going to be hard to trim out the aircraft when turning. So my problem is I'm too far over. So we're passing over a town called Pokeno. We're kind of heading straight for it off to the right. So right down there I'm thinking is Pokeno. So I want to try to give us more views like that, but I can't do that until I know the plane isn't going to drop out of the sky. So I need to get this trim solved. And technically, it almost seems like I need, not elevator trim, but like rudder trim, because it keeps wanting to turn to the right on me. Alright, I'm pretty close, I think. I mean, I'm rising a little bit. It's hard because I don't know if I'm doing something. See, so I'm just wondering, like, what if I do that? Let's see. No, that goes the wrong way. So I want to go this way, probably. No, that's worse. Alright. Oh my goodness. Clearly I'm causing myself a problem, and now I don't know that I can, like, make it go back is the problem. Okay, I'd love to know where my indicator is on that, because, alright, because like right now I can see I'm pressing it. This is more difficult than I would imagine. Okay, so that gets me to the left, which is not what I want, but I like can't do the right. There we go. So I think if I can... My God. I'm just not sure. Like, I've never had to do that kind of trim. So I'm not sure if I'm going in the right direction here. Right. That does appear to be... Oh, now it's gone there too far. Oh my God. Alright, at some point we'll be flying, I promise. Because, yeah, I just want to do tiny little changes. Let's see. Come on. No, that's not the way I wanted to go. See, so I see what the problem is. It's like sometimes doing the wrong direction. Oh, come on. Oh, my goodness. I'm just not going to be able to get this. So what I'm wondering is, because the yellow I think is what I'm doing. No, but I think the other one is where I should be. Because again, I'm way over again. I need to be way over to the left.
Overspeed. Overspeed. 500.
Alright, so I nearly dove into the ground. So that was bad. But we're doing a little better here. Holy moly. So yeah, I may just have to fight this one and maybe I'll figure it out later. So I thought I had changed the surfaces I needed to change, but clearly something is off. So I'll worry about the regular trim and then I'll just fix my other things. So, alright, let me... I'm like totally... I almost turned around in that dive, which you didn't really see because it was... Yeah, I'll have cut it out because it was just a disaster of me pushing buttons and trying to get out of pause and whatever, and then suddenly I'm diving. But anyway. So, typically the flight director is going to give you where we're supposed to be going. So like in there, the yellow on top of the pink should be theoretically where I should be headed. So like, you know, what I can do, and this is where I'm not sure. So there, I can do the heading bug. And then in theory, if I turn AP on, see the problem is I don't know what it's doing with the vertical. Like it was obviously, I don't know. I'll figure that out. Because certainly to get some views, it would be easier if I just let the plane fly. But part of what I wanted to show was just the flying, but I'm having a bit of a hard time with that. And some of it is, again, I jumped in a plane I don't know as well. You know, a lot of just pretty basic countryside, nothing incredible here yet. You know, we're on the northern part of the island. And it's telling me, still telling me I have 20 minutes estimated, and I'm sure a large part of that, I mean, I'll drag this over so you can see the disaster. This is the path we've flown. Like, we're everywhere. This is where we should be. So yeah, I've got 63 nautical miles to go out of 92. So I am definitely having a bit of a challenge. You know, and the problem is at 4,000 feet, I don't have a lot of flexibility. Alright, so I'm trying to set my trim again. Why is this diving like this? Like the trim shouldn't be off that far. Because now I'm worried I'm going to go too far the other way and it's just going to go nose up before I know it. Man. It's much easier in a Cessna, let me tell you that. And maybe it's just because I've had a little more time in the Cessna, but this is a lot. So we're close. See, but now it like starts to turn when I let it go. Alright, so we're at negative 300, negative 250, negative 2. You know, and sometimes it'll bounce around. Like, if you know, it'll go up 100 and then it'll start to drop again. Like, that's many times the best you can hope for. So let me push the throttle back 1. See if that changes anything. Alright, we're falling back a little bit. Alright, well now I'm too far. We're crossing the line right now. So again, you want to put some back pressure on the stick when you turn. Not a lot, because again, I'm climbing way too fast. But now let me try to straighten out again. And let's see where things come in, because I don't have to be right on the line. I mean, I just need to be nearby. At least I'm close. So now because I wasn't turning back ahead of time, and obviously you're making an arc in the sky. So, you know, what I probably need to be is, say, over here. I'm just trying to get too quickly back on path, where I can probably do this and be okay. Well, maybe not, because now it still looks like I'm just parallel with it. So let's take it to, say, 130. Alright. We'll climb up a bit. Alright. So I do apologize. I do have a cold. So I'm sometimes coughing, having to clear my throat. So if I somehow miss one, I know that just can't sound pleasant. I do apologize. Alright. Still seems to be falling. I'm playing with the trim. Gotta be close here. This should not take this long. I mean, this has been half the flight, playing with the trim wheel. Normally you can trim a plane out in, because basically what you want to do is get yourself level and then let the stick go, and it should be okay. Because if you let the plane try to fix itself, it just kind of, I think, creates this yo-yo. So now it's 100, 150. So like, to me it's still like it's falling too much. So I'm gonna put a couple more points of back pressure on the trim. Let's see, negative 100, negative 150. Like, at some point it needs to stop, and it's just not. I don't understand. I've never seen a plane be this challenging. Come on, now it's going to rise? Okay, but now it's going back. Maybe we finally gotten it. And at this point, I'm very close to parallel with where I'm at. 50 nautical miles to go. So the other problem I've got is, you know, well, it's not really a problem. We're flying pretty low here. So let's see. I should be safely able to go out here a little bit. I can't quite tell, obviously, because I don't have the instruments, because I don't want to give a weird view. But now we finally get to look around. This is what I wanted more of the flight to be, and I'm sure future ones will be more of that. But it looks like we're headed about in the right direction. I'm kind of getting a little too close to the line. So again, if I do the heading bug here, and now if I hit autopilot, what happens? So what I want it to do is just stay here. Like it should stay on the altitude. It should stay. See, like, why is it going down? So let's see. Like maybe now that I hit altitude, because maybe the pitch was selected at... No, it's still going down. Like why? I see. Alright, I didn't have an altitude selected. So there we go. So let me set it... Well, let me go all the way to 4,000. Now we're gonna lose some airspeed. Now that beep is probably because we're getting closer. Alright, so let me see. If I speed up a bit, because right now what may be happening is I just may not have enough power, or will it not? Let's see. So let me set the vertical to 500, and then it should stop at 4,000. But then what this gives me, and then let's see, if I navigate, whoops, if I turn the heading, if I put the heading there, I should be able to kind of get to where I want to get. So let me see. Put myself back there to 115. Because I'm okay doing a little bit of this. I don't know. Maybe I'm okay doing a lot of it. I just don't know. You guys can let me know. Is it fun watching me fumble around? And and again, if I know I'm going to be flying, so now it's blinking altitude, because it's basically telling me it's locking in. So the VS went away, and this is kind of how autopilot will work then. Alright. So I think we're in a good spot. I just don't know what my heading is really supposed to be. So it's clearly more to the left a little bit. So what I'm going to need to do in this plane, if I'm not doing a full autopilot, and flight plan, which I may do because there's a flight management system here somewhere. So in theory, I can do that. And then I can just do a lot more of the sightseeing around the plane. So there's some hills over there. So over in that direction, right about straight toward the top of the screen, in theory we're coming up on Mata Mata, which is a name I've heard. I don't know why. Maybe it was a location that they used for filming or something. But, this is where it's nice for a plane. Like, you can put yourself through, like, oh, I want to do every piece. And again, obviously I have enough capability that I saw I was diving. I mean, I did save the plane 300 feet from the surface, so that was calling it a little bit close. But, alright, so now going too much. So let's see. Go to 114. It's not moving. And then once it moves, oh, now I'm too far. So let's see if it goes back, because this is like 115, 114. It's really close to that. At this point, we're 32 nautical miles away. So, telling me about 8 minutes. And this airport is at 938 feet versus, whatchamacallit, versus 23 feet that we were in Auckland. Now, my challenge is going to be, I should be heading off, so I'm going to do that. I should be heading off in this direction to get a better lineup on the runway. So we're about 20, so I've got to run a little bit in that direction. And this one's not as obvious as as the other one was. So I'm having a look at multiple things here. So again, we've got some pretty nice little hills. I think we're more than high enough. We don't have any clearance issues. You know, but this is a little bit of the VFR flying. So right now I think I'm on about the right heading that I want to be. So what we're doing is, because we're coming in on runway 360, which is going to be basically straight up and down, straight north-south, I need to go down enough to come in at the right angle, if that makes sense. So if I'm guessing, like, the airport's out there somewhere, again, I'm always kind of centering it and looking straight into the center of the screen. You know, and it looks like, as you can tell, it looks like the plane's bouncing up and down a little bit. It's just hard to tell. But that's where, at least if I have the altitude and all that working, and the heading, I know, you know, that I'm doing what I need. Alright, so no, I'm navigating too far to the south, so let's go back to, say, 145-ish. You know, and now we're obviously going to come toward the airport slower, because we're, you know, it's a triangle at this point. So I'm kind of, in essence, going up the hypotenuse, where before we were going down one axis, and then we're going to approach from the other axis. But the issue is, even the approach that it's having me take, I think, is going to be a challenge. And what I really should be using is more the RNAV. Let's see. I don't know that I have. Okay, that's just the traffic inset. PFD settings. See, so active nav is FMS. So if I can get that input, like, then I can just enjoy the scenery and I don't have to worry about flying. But there's a little bit of, you know, I should fly a bit, is kind of what it feels like. But yet, you know, part of the goal is to just look at this wonderful countryside. But it's interesting, we're almost like going down the ridge line is kind of the way it's running us through. And it would seem, so now I need to turn a little bit more toward the north. So I'm going to pull it back to, say, 135. So you can see the heading bug there, 134. So there we go. So that way we know it'll end up on 135. And now I've got a bit of a way, and again, it's close to 45 degrees. So I would say it's there-ish. Like, somewhere there is the airport. And I get that's a big somewhere. But this is some of the challenge with VFRs. I may have to overfly the airport to see it, and then do, in essence, a pattern to come in and around. That's part of the fun with some of this flying, is just figuring out how you get places. Alright, so I'm gonna move this to, say, 130. Whoops. There we go. You know, and once again, like, it should give us a warning, I think, if we're within, like, 250 feet. It may not. I don't know. So yeah, you can see, I like how it has the heat thing, because, you know, we've got those exhaust ports on the engine here. You know, and I think, again, this is technically a turboprop, which is what the intake at the bottom is, I think, is helping. Because people do say, like, that this is one of the better turboprop planes in the base game, because I don't want to spend a lot of money on aircraft. I know there's some people that's kind of what they do. And I have bought one. I have PMDG 737-700 for my airliners, along with the free Airbus. So, and typically I'd be flying charter flights in a Cessna Citation, the CJ4, I think. But, you know, it just felt like this was a prop plane kind of country. I don't know. Plus, I can go a lot slower in this plane, so it makes it easier to handle and recover from things, where the Cessna is still a jet. So you're still coming in at like 140, where the landing here is going to be 100 or 80 knots. That looks like water over here. And in fact it is. Alright, but looking at my bigger map, so let me see. Alright, so we are near the shore of that lake, is where the airport appears to be. So looking at my two sources, and I'm not going to try to drag them over. I'll do it now, I guess. So you can see here. So here's the airport. Here we are. And then this is the track I'm kind of following. So that gives you a view of kind of the two things I'm using to guide me in here. Interesting terrain and formations there. Just looks like exposed rock. Interesting. But this is where, in X-Plane 12, you could not get scenery that was this good without, like, auto ortho and things, which I just could not get to work. And so it became a battle I no longer wanted to fight. And so, you know, everybody's like, if you want a visually stunning flight simulator, like, go with Microsoft, and I can't really argue with them. This is pretty nice. In theory, the sale point of X-Plane, which is what got me to try it first, is it's a little more authentic in the flight controls and the modeling. But I think the audience there is just so much smaller. There just isn't that much being done. So what I'm thinking is that the airport is kind of there. So that's where I'm kind of visually heading. So let's see. If I look over there, so you can do quick looks at times, which are nice. And I think that's where we need to be. I just don't know how many miles we're out. But if I go back now, and so now I'm going to turn my heading over to, you know, basically I need to go to 0, ultimately here. Well, kind of. I say that, and then I realize, well, not really, because I need to line up on it yet, and I'm not quite there. So I think I need to go to 0 more when I'm here. My problem is I'm not seeing enough. I can't quite tell when I'm lined up with the runway, but I'm going to try to go this way for a little bit. It's just the challenge, I'll tell you that. It's telling me I'm 11 nautical miles away, which should in theory give me enough time to maneuver a bit. And this is where the charts of the airport would be so helpful, because I could kind of see the layout of the airport, and that's what I feel I'm missing. Alright. So, looks like we got some water over there. Definitely some interesting viewpoints here. See, what I'm trying to now do is get some sort of view of a runway or... So where that island is, it's basically showing me that the landing point is just south of that island, on the edge of on the shore of the lake. So in theory, I probably want to go... Let me go head this way some more, because I just don't think I'm over quite enough yet. And that may be why I'm not seeing it. So this may be the airport. that is what I'm going to target right now. It's going to be challenging with this because if I'm trying to line up, because I need to start lowering my altitude soon too. But this is beautiful though, I will tell you. The water and everything in between. Alright. So now I'm going to head back to pretty much 0, and we'll see. Oh, wait a minute. Am I? Okay, no. Alright, so if I get myself to 0 or 360, I should be able to start seeing a runway. Do I see one, is the question. My goodness, I do not feel I do. Alright, I'm going to disengage the autopilot. And again, this is where it can get kind of ugly. Because right now, we're theoretically 5 nautical miles away. And I feel like I think the airport is right there. I think I flew way, way too close. So I think what I need to do is determine if that is in fact the airport. And then circle around and come back in again. So at this point, that is what I am doing. So I am going to try to overfly. And yes, now I see a blinking light for a split second there. So that is, in fact, the airport. So what I want to do then is I want to head out at 180. I'm climbing. I don't want to do that. I don't need to go any higher. I don't necessarily need to go down, but I don't need to go high. Okay, I'd say I don't need to go down as I start diving. But I need to basically go 180. And so what I probably didn't do really well is set some sort of nav beacon. But again, if you're doing VFR and stuff like that, you know, which again, this is probably a little bit of a hybrid one way or the other. Alright, so let me level this out, and then let's see. So now if I go back here, alright, so it's over. So if I turn to the left and then come back, I think I'll be in good shape. But I want to head out a little bit. So I'm going to put down my gear. And I'm going to start slowing down eventually. So again, I want to stay at this level. I'm going to turn 30's probably as far as you really want to go. Going down a lot. There's just a challenge because it's not a fly-by-wire aircraft. So it's just a lot. Alright, where is this? In theory, okay, that's a different body of water. That's what's concerning me. I'm looking at this screen here. Alright, so my problem is I think I'm literally now behind... Oh boy. I think I'm behind the hill. And I can't see what I need to see. But in theory... Oh, this is so not working. No, this is not the right body of water. I'm looking at my other map. I think I'm now... No, I can't be. This is so confusing. Because at this point, I should be... Okay, there, Right? Is that it? Yes. So that's the lake with the island. Problem is, the way this turned, I like totally went, oh my goodness. I think I know where I'm at, but I'm not in a good spot. Let's just say that. Oh, I am diving, which is bad. Let me back this off. Whoops. Alright, so now I'm going to go to takeoff flaps and landing flaps. And now I'm going to raise myself up a bit. And in theory, that's our airport. But man, this is going to be ugly. If that's really the airport. So let me get myself back where I need to be here. Yep, there it is. Oof. But this is going to be such a steep angle of attack. I think I'm going to get a terrible landing rate here.
500.
So let's see. So the white on my speed, I think, is showing me like I can fly on flaps there. Alright. So I got the 500 warning. We're still sinking a little bit again. It's 900 some, so I'm only a few feet above here. Those trees are not helping. The fence is not helping. Alright, but I think theoretically a little bit short, but we'll take it. There's no reverse thrusters. I've been flying other things so long. That plane looks like it's just suspended in the air. Alright. So, now I should be in taxi, which I am. Now if I go there, I can see where I'm at, and there we go. Alright. So we have ourselves a very, very tiny little airport. But it's here, which is the most important thing. But I touched down at 118 feet per minute, which is actually way better than I thought. Is that plane flying? Or is that just like a scenery? No, it's doing something. There's no real gates. I think it's just part of the airport or something, but that clearly is not a plane that's moving at any speed you'd want to move at if you were in a real plane. Whoops, I'm pushing my ailerons, but that's not going to work. So there we go. Welcome to Rotorua. So we made it. So, not bad, but definitely interesting. Now we need to figure out how to shut the engine off. I think I just obviously do the opposite. Now the starter's off, but how do I turn the engine off? So if I go here, cut off, I bet. So if I go there, and I'm thinking that'll do it. It looks hopeful. It says engine off and it's filed. Yeah, but that thing is, all of this is just some sort of, I don't know what. So I don't know if that's supposed to be a glider or what, but in any event, we are done. You know, we could deboard our passengers. Let's see, what have we got here? We need to put the parking brake on. And yes, now we can turn off our heaters. And then we've got this auxiliary pump on. We don't need the autopilot now. Low voltage, so yeah, we'd have to turn the battery back on. Well, it's on, but in theory I think we do that, turn everything off, and we're done. So hopefully you enjoyed the view. I'm kind of going in what they call the showcase camera, just to get around a little bit, see what we've got. So another plane there, which again I'm sure is from the injector. I'm not sure what's running. In theory, it's that thing. Let's see. Let's go see what's down here on the ground and everything else. Yeah, so in theory, that's a little prop plane doing some weird circles. This is like a taxi guy. Maybe this is their training pad? Not quite sure what's happening, but probably shouldn't be happening. But this is probably a problem with GSX, where it just doesn't know what to do and where to place things. I don't think that's an injected plane, though. I think that's probably part of the scenery for this airport, because it's clearly just running in some really slow, tiny circle, but it gives it some views there. But hopefully you've enjoyed this first leg of the New Zealand run. So if we go back over here, 1 of 10, and you can see now that one's green, and this is where we'll be running. Whoops. I have the window shrunk a little bit. Usually the legs are next to it. So that one's completed, and now we'll be able to bid on the next flight, which is a little bit longer, but you can see basically, if you think about it, it's 10 legs, a little under 1,000, so we've got to average a little under 100 nautical miles per leg. So this is going to be one of the longer ones. Looks like the longest one is that one, and maybe that's where we switch islands. I'm not sure, but we've gone from Auckland to Rotorua. Hopefully it's been a fun time for you. I've enjoyed it. It was way more exciting than I hoped it would be. But like anything on the channel, let me know. Is this something you're interested in? Is it something that is a niche thing and no one really wants to watch flight simulator videos? But my point is, I'm probably going to be spending some time in here, and I'm okay sharing the flights or whatever. I can also do some, I'm thinking over time I will do some learning, like how I learned to get familiar with it. Like if you're a newbie, you're considering doing flight simulation, but have no idea how to get started. Like I was a month and a half ago, not an hour and a half ago. I spent hundreds of hours getting to the point I'm at now. Not just in the sim, but I can't tell you how many things I researched, how many things I read, how many videos I watched. So to kind of give you a quick start or speed you up, if this is something you may be interested in, I'm always willing to share kind of my journey as a real newbie with no aviation background to being able to do what I just did, which was not crash land. I landed a little earlier than I probably would have liked. I think I hit the grass before the end of the start of the runway, but it was close enough that everybody probably walked away from the landing. Kind of the old phrase of every landing people can walk away from is a good landing. But I'm going to strive to do better. But I also literally never flew this aircraft before, so just like anything, I think the more familiar I get with it, the better. I did notice, like, I should have retracted my flaps and so forth. I won't be able to do that now because the plane's not powered on. So, there's nothing I can do with it. But so that was a little bit of sloppiness. But once again, it just depends how much authenticity you want to go for. You really just need to hop in the plane and take off if you just want to play. But I think part of the fun of this will be experiencing these little airports, experiencing this area of the world that it is a bucket list item. As I said, I want to get out to New Zealand, but am I ever going to be able to do what I'm doing here, which is get on 10 little flights on little planes and have them take me all throughout New Zealand? Probably not. If they fly like I just flew, I think I'd be happy not to do that, because I don't know that I want to be diving from 4,000 to 300 feet, probably convinced that all is over, and then suddenly the pilot pull up. So I do apologize to my passengers in the back here. I'm sure that was really heart-wrenching, and if there's a cleaning bill necessary, please send it to me. So, because that was certainly my fault. But I think what I've learned is, much as I would like to not do the autopilot and would like to trim fly and appear super capable, maybe that's just too much to try to look at the scenery and whatever. I just need to be happy, get up, let the autopilot keep the plane stable and just adjust the altitude and the heading and do my thing. I mean, I'm still going to have to land. This is not a plane that will auto land, even if I did put flight plans in. But I don't know that I really need the flight plans. Like, I was able to, I think, competently get this done with SimBrief and Sim Toolkit Pro, helping me out, just giving me maps that way. And so that's where I felt it was a little bit of a VFR type thing, because I like the airport's here somewhere, but I don't know exactly where. And just like I think people that do real VFR flying, you know, things look different from the air. I mean, you can have an idea of the airport's over here, but I think a lot of people do an overfly, and okay, now I know where it is. Now I'll go kind of go into a pattern and go out a few miles and then come back in. And, you know, because normally on the pattern thing, you're going to be about 1,000 feet above. So I should have been coming in maybe at 2,000 feet, and instead I was overflying the airport at like 3,500 and then trying to come back down and back, and I just clearly didn't give myself enough space to come out. So, but I'll learn over time how to make it a little bit better. But give me feedback on if this is something you want to see. I've had a few people ask me, like, when are you going to get flight sim material on the channel? People that knew I was working with it, and I'm like, not sure yet. You know, obviously part of it, frankly, is just, you know, this isn't a channel where I'm publicly saying who I am or whatever in real life, and so I'm always leery of doing things. And in the flight sim community, VAT sim, things like that, just like iRacing, that's why you don't see any iRacing content on the channel too. You know, you're required to use your real name when you register. That's just kind of the way it works, and you know, that's just not something that I'm doing on the channel. It's not like I'm a YouTuber who's, hey, this is me, and I'm trying to become an influencer, so that people know who I am and so forth. So I'm fine being the mature simmer, and so I think I can do things here and show things in a way that still gives you enough of a feel of what's going on, and lets me protect that privacy as I go forward as well. So being transparent, as I try to always be, of where my head's at. And again, if you've enjoyed this, you enjoy the channel, please consider dropping a like on this video. It'll help people, especially with new type of content like this. But this is kind of what I feel might be the sweet spot, is doing some of these tours in just different areas of the world, and taking you along so that you can see what they look like. And same reason I wanted to fly here. I'm like, I hear it's beautiful. Let's take a look at it from the air. And I'm sure as we get into the more mountainous areas and so forth, it's going to get way more stunning, where this was nice, but nothing breathtaking that I felt like we crossed yet. But this is 1 out of 10 legs. So we've certainly got lots of opportunities to see other things. And I know, you know, we read the introduction about mountainside landings and so forth. So I think we've got a couple seat of our pants moments ahead of us that may end in disaster, sadly, but we shall see. If you're not a subscriber yet, please consider doing that. Helps with the channel, getting, you know, people to see that, hey, there's a bunch of people interested in following here. Maybe I should be too. And I think that influences the YouTube algorithm as well. Like, if I get to be a channel with 100,000 subscribers, that's probably going to be put in front of more eyeballs than where I'm at now with just over 1,000. So no specific desire goals that way, but growth is always a good thing. It makes it feel like people are enjoying what I'm doing and the audience is more interested. So but I've rambled on enough, as always. And with that, I will see you next time.